You've read the books on positive thinking. You've practiced gratitude. You've tried affirmations, visualization, reframing your thoughts. You understand intellectually that most of what you worry about never happens, that you're safe, that you should be able to relax, but you can't. No matter how much you meditate, how many mantras you repeat, how hard you work on changing your mindset, the stress doesn't go away. It sits in your chest. It tightens your shoulders. It wakes you at 3 in the morning with your mind already racing. And you start to believe that maybe you're just not doing it right, that other people can think their way to peace, but for some reason you can't. Maybe you're not disciplined enough, not evolved enough, not trying hard enough. But what if I told you that's not true? What if the reason mindset work hasn't fixed your chronic stress has nothing to do with your effort or your worthiness and everything to do with the fact that you're trying to solve a nervous system problem with a cognitive solution? According to Dr. Gabor Maté, chronic stress is not caused by your thoughts. It's caused by a nervous system that was wired, often decades ago, to perceive the world as fundamentally unsafe. And you can't think your way out of that. You have to feel your way through it. Because the problem isn't in your head, it's in your body. And until you understand that, you'll keep blaming yourself for something that was never yours to fix through willpower alone. Let's start by naming what chronic stress actually is. It's not the stress of a deadline, or a difficult conversation, or a busy week. Those are acute stress, temporary, situational, the kind your nervous system was designed to handle. Chronic stress is different. It's not triggered by external events. It's a baseline state. You feel it when you're sitting still, when nothing is objectively wrong, when you should be relaxing, but your body won't let you. It's the constant hum of vigilance, the sense that something bad is always about to happen, the feeling that you're never quite safe, even when you are. And here's what most people don't understand. Chronic stress is not a thought pattern you can change. It's a nervous system state you're living in. Your body is stuck in survival mode, not because you're thinking negative thoughts, but because your autonomic nervous system, the part of you that operates below conscious awareness, has been programmed to stay activated. And that programming didn't start last week. It started a long time ago. According to Gabor Maté, the roots of chronic stress are almost always found in childhood, not necessarily in dramatic trauma, but in the relational environment you grew up in. If you grew up in a home where emotions were unpredictable, where you never knew what version of your parent you'd encounter, where you had to constantly monitor the emotional temperature of the room, your nervous system learned to stay on high alert, because in that environment, letting your guard down was dangerous. Relaxing meant you'd miss the signs, you'd be caught off guard, you'd get hurt, so your system stayed activated, vigilant, always scanning for threat. And even now, decades later, even though you're objectively safe, your nervous system hasn't updated its programming. It still believes the world is unpredictable, that people are unsafe, that you need to stay ready. Or maybe you grew up in a home where your needs were inconvenient, where expressing what you wanted was met with dismissal, irritation, or punishment. So your nervous system learned that depending on others is dangerous, that you have to handle everything yourself, that asking for help equals being a burden. And now as an adult, you can't delegate, you can't rest, you carry everything alone, because your body believes that if you don't, everything will fall apart. That's not a mindset issue. That's a nervous system that learns self-reliance as a survival strategy. Or maybe you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where you were valued for what you did, not for who you were. So your nervous system learned that rest equals worthlessness, that your value is tied to productivity, that stopping means becoming invisible. And now you can't turn off. You can't enjoy downtime without guilt. You live in a state of perpetual doing because your body believes that's the only way to stay loved. Again, not a mindset problem, a nervous system problem. Here's why this distinction matters. When you treat chronic stress as a mindset problem, you blame yourself for not being able to think differently. You tell yourself, I know this anxiety is irrational. I know I'm catastrophizing. I know I should be able to calm down. And when you can't, you assume it's a personal failure, a lack of willpower, proof that you're not strong enough, not evolved enough, not trying hard enough. But your nervous system doesn't care what you know intellectually. It's not operating from your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that thinks logically and rationally. It's operating from your brainstem and limbic system, the ancient, unconscious parts that were shaped by your earliest experiences. And those parts don't respond to affirmations, they respond to felt safety. You can tell yourself 1,000 times that you're safe, but if your body doesn't feel safe, the message won't land. Because your nervous system doesn't believe what you think, it believes what it experienced. And if it experienced a world where safety was conditional, where love was unpredictable, where you had to be hypervigilant to survive, that's the world it still believes you're living in. So, what does this look like in real life? It looks like the person who meditates every morning but still feels anxious all day because they're trying to calm a nervous system that's fundamentally wired for threat, and 20 minutes of breathing can't override decades of conditioning. It looks like the person who knows logically that they're doing well, they have a job, a home, people who care about them, but they still can't shake the feeling that something's wrong because their nervous system isn't responding to their current reality, it's responding to the lack of safety they experienced years ago. It looks like the person who can't relax on vacation, who brings work with them, who feels more anxious when they have nothing to do than when they're overwhelmed, because their nervous system equates rest with danger. And no amount of positive thinking will change that until the body has new experiences of rest being safe. It looks like the person who startles easily, who's always scanning the room, who can't fully be present because part of them is always monitoring for threat, not because they're choosing to be vigilant, but because their nervous system is doing what it was trained to do, keep them alive in an environment that felt unsafe. And here's the most insidious part. When you don't understand that chronic stress is a nervous system issue, you end up trying to fix it in ways that actually make it worse. You push yourself harder. You tell yourself to toughen up. You force yourself to keep going, even when your body is screaming for rest. Because you've been taught that stress is a mental weakness, something you overcome through discipline and determination. But chronic stress isn't weakness, it's dysregulation. And when you push through dysregulation instead of addressing it, you reinforce the very patterns you're trying to break. You confirm to your nervous system that the world is not safe, that you can't trust your own limits, that you have to stay activated to survive. Or you try to manage the stress through control. You micromanage your environment. You avoid anything that might be triggering. You create rigid routines and structures to keep the anxiety at bay. And for a while it works. The control gives you a sense of safety, but it's a false safety because you're not healing the dysregulation. You're just containing it. And the moment something breaks your routine, the moment you can't control the outcome, the stress floods back, often worse than before. Because your nervous system hasn't learned to tolerate uncertainty, it's just learned to avoid it. So what actually works? According to Gabor Maté, healing chronic stress requires working at the level of the nervous system, not the mind. It requires practices that help your body feel safe, not just understand safety intellectually. And that looks different from what most self-help advice will tell you. It's not about thinking more positively. It's about slowly, gradually teaching your nervous system that the threat has passed, that you're not that child anymore, that the environment that required hypervigilance is no longer your reality. And you do that not through thoughts, but through experience, through somatic practices that help your body discharge the activation it's been holding. Things like shaking, dancing, crying, anything that lets the nervous system complete the stress responses it's been stuck in for years. Through co-regulation, being in the presence of people whose nervous systems are regulated, whose calm you can borrow until your own system learns what regulation feels like. Through boundaries, learning to say no, to protect your energy, to honor your limits. Because every time you override your boundaries, you tell your nervous system, we're still not safe to protect ourselves. Through rest, not as something you earn, but as something you practice, because your nervous system will never believe the danger has passed if you never allow it to rest. and through addressing the relational wounds that created the dysregulation in the first place. Because if your chronic stress stems from a childhood where you weren't allowed to have needs, where you had to suppress your feelings, where love felt conditional, mindset work won't touch that. You have to grieve what you didn't get. You have to feel the anger you weren't allowed to express. You have to give yourself the attunement and safety that was missing. And that's not mental work, that's emotional work, somatic work, relational work. Here's what this means in practice it means you stop treating your stress as a personal failure and start seeing it as information. Information about what your nervous system experienced, what it learned, what it's still protecting you from. It means you stop trying to positive think your way out of activation and start asking, what does my body need right now to feel safe? Maybe it needs movement. Maybe it needs stillness. Maybe it needs to cry, to rage, to shake. Maybe it needs you to finally say no to the thing you've been forcing yourself to say yes to. Maybe it needs you to stop performing productivity and allow yourself to just be. It means you stop comparing yourself to people who seem naturally calm and recognizing that they likely had different nervous system programming. They're not better than you. They're not more evolved. They just didn't have to develop the same survival strategies you did. And it means you start building a life that supports nervous system regulation instead of constantly triggering dysregulation. A life with boundaries, with rest, with relationships that feel safe, with work that doesn't require you to abandon yourself. Because you can do all the somatic therapy in the world, but if you go back to a life that constantly activates your nervous system, the healing won't stick. And this is where it gets hard, because changing your life to support your nervous system often means disappointing people. It means setting boundaries with family members who are used to you being available. It means leaving jobs that demand more than your nervous system can sustain. It means ending friendships that are built on you being the caretaker, and your nervous system will fight you on this. Because the last time you set boundaries, the last time you prioritized yourself, the last time you said no, you lost connection. You were punished. You were made to feel selfish. So even though you're an adult now, even though the circumstances are different, your body still believes that protecting yourself equals losing love. And that's terrifying. But here's the truth. The people you lose by setting boundaries are the people who needed you to stay dysregulated, who needed you to stay small, to stay stressed, to stay in survival mode. And letting them go isn't loss, it's liberation. Because on the other side of that boundary is a nervous system that can finally rest, a body that doesn't have to be on high alert all the time, a version of you that's not constantly braced for the next threat. Gabor Maté often says, it's not the stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it. But I'd add, our reaction to stress is not a choice we make consciously. It's a pattern we learned unconsciously. And you can't change an unconscious pattern through conscious effort alone. You have to work at the level where the pattern was formed, in the body, in the nervous system, in the relational field. And that work is slow, it's not linear, it doesn't offer quick fixes or instant relief, but it's the only work that actually addresses the root, because your chronic stress isn't about what you're thinking today. It's about what you experienced years ago and how your nervous system adapted to survive it. And until you honor that, until you work with your body instead of against it, until you stop blaming yourself for a biological response you didn't choose, you'll stay stuck in the cycle of trying to think your way out of something that lives in your cells, stuck in the belief that you should be able to just relax, just let go, just stop being so stressed, stuck in the shame of not being able to do what everyone says is so simple. But it's not simple. And it's not your fault. You're not failing at stress management. You're living with a nervous system that was shaped by circumstances beyond your control. And the healing isn't about trying harder. It's about finally understanding what you're actually dealing with. So here's what I want you to know. Your chronic stress is not a personal defect. It's not proof that you're weak, broken, or not trying hard enough. It's proof that your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect you based on what it learned about the world. And if it learned that the world is unsafe, that people are unpredictable, that you have to stay vigilant to survive. It's going to keep you in that state until it has evidence otherwise. Not intellectual evidence, felt evidence. Evidence that comes from safe relationships, from honoring your boundaries, from resting without punishment, from expressing your needs without abandonment. That evidence accumulates slowly, over time, through experience, not through thought. And as it does, your nervous system will begin to update. The chronic activation will ease, the constant vigilance will soften, the stress that's been your baseline will start to feel less like who you are and more like something you're moving through. Not because you finally mastered your mindset, but because you finally gave your body what it needed all along. Safety, real safety, not the idea of it, the experience of it. And that changes everything. So here's my question for you. What's one way your body has been trying to tell you it doesn't feel safe? And what would it look like to honor that instead of override it? Share in the comments, not to solve it, just to notice it. And if this reframed how you see your stress, consider subscribing. There's a lot more where this came from. Because the work of healing chronic stress isn't about becoming more positive. It's about becoming more embodied, more honest, more connected to what your body has been trying to tell you all along. Your stress is not a mindset problem. It's a nervous system problem. And the moment you understand that, you stop fighting yourself and start healing yourself. And that makes all the difference.